So, now, part 3 of my video. What's happening now? What's happening now is ridiculous. About the 2-year mark, a lot of things happened with my calling in complaints to her boss. Again, I only spoke with her once in a complaining nature, and that's when she opened up a conversation as to kind of belittling me or badgering me about not having added gravel to my driveway. And all I did at that time was just telling a normal speaking tone, lady, I can't believe you would mention that. Your service is so terrible. Moving on. All my complaints to the local office were met with, well, first of all, it's impossible to get through. They don't list their local number. That's something that should be outlawed. Your post office doesn't have a local number. You should think something's wrong there. At many times when I would call the local number, it would then kick over to the 1-800 number, which those people are alien to the entire area. They have no idea what the heck you're talking about. Especially when you get specific about a carrier, then you begin wondering about the structure of the entire postal service. And I became painfully aware that yes, every time they talk about bailout money, we hear how it's not a government agency. Well, I was never more painfully aware of that fact than when I realized that government bureaucracies actually are structured to work better than the U.S. Postal Service, in my area anyway. And I began wondering out loud to my family and friends, I wonder how the place even holds together. All this talk of a bailout about 2 years ago, when all the other bailouts were going on, you wonder how they've held on this long with such terrible service. Well, hold that thought, because here's one more instance, and then I'll get on to why that's odd. One more instance of her poor delivery of a package. Well, I want to move into several actually, because they're hitting me now. One of them, one time about 3 years ago, it was about 2.5 years ago, in early part of 2013, I think. She actually took the time to get out of her vehicle and neatly place the package on my top stair of my front porch, but still out from under the cowling, the roof, so that it would get wet. And that was a sign to me that this woman is very specifically immature. This is not a crazy woman. This is a crazy woman with like an agenda. She has a way of, once you're on her bad side, she will let you know that she's in charge, and she has people down at the local office who are protecting her while she's doing this. She's being very immature. About that same time, later on that same year, three more complaints later by me, and again, never talking with her in person, I finally got a call back from a guy who he identified himself as the regional supervisor, and actually it was a regional investigator. He was an investigator in this region of our state, and he was going to personally follow her around in his car for 3 days. I questioned that, and he said, oh, I don't have to drive too far. That's my job, and I do live close enough to your county, Warren County, Kentucky, where it's not a big deal for me to do this. But believe you me, you're not the only person who's called, and we are going to look into her, and it's going to be me myself. I'm going to follow her around, and we don't just do this when one person has a problem. When I'm called in, I'm like a fixer. It's gone way beyond what, it's not just you, it's other people. And to substantiate that, I'd like to relate a story. Well, the story is, I've already told you half of it, but in his phone call, he mentioned, he asked me a question. After the initial questions as to who I was and identifying where I lived, he said, Mr. Denny, let me ask you this. Do you have a large, barking, threatening dog in your yard? And I was like, wow, really? She's claiming I have a large dog. I have cats. And if I had a large, barking dog, I basically couldn't have the cats. That would be the trade-off, because it sounds like this would be a large, barking dog. And I told the guy, look, I don't have a large, barking dog. He goes, I said, you can do a surprise investigation on my house if you want. You can come by. You don't even have to call ahead to see if I'm home. And you think I'm crazy? Bring the cops by. Anytime you come by my house, you will not find a large barking dog that she's reporting. And I'll never forget his response. And I quote, oh, that's what I thought. And I'm like, really? That's what you thought? What do you mean? He goes, well, she's been saying this about a lot of customers. You're not the only one. It seems that everybody who calls and complains about this woman, this carrier whose name was Scarlett something, she says the same thing. So when we saw that pattern, they called me in, and I'm going to investigate her. I'm going to investigate her by following her around for 3 days. Now, here's where I failed. I really, really dropped the ball on this. I had another problem with her in a week. I think it was the time that she was coming down the driveway asking me why uh, I hadn't re-gravelled my driveway. And forgive me if the dates aren't exactly right. Who writes this stuff down? Who knows ahead of time that your postal carrier is going to work you and play you like a pro? And in all of this, she's just not going to deliver your mail right, but just under the bar where she's not even going to be reprimanded. It's just you that's going through the hell because maybe you are a jerk. Sure, I've been a jerk. I'm a jerk right now to my girlfriend, but that I'm not that way to people normally, and I don't go around being a jerk to people who I rely on for simple services like the things you take for granted. I just don't do that. So at the time, I said, come on by anytime I do that, and he said, no, I'm going to follow her around. Well, right after that is when I saw her again. I don't remember whether it was a gravel thing or not, but she got on my nerves, and I said, look, lady, yeah, I think it was the gravel thing. Yeah, sticking with that because as I recall, I said to her, oh, yeah, it was a different time. It was her sub at this other time, and I only saw her once. So I told her, and this wasn't even griping to her. I said, look, I'm just letting you know that the postal carrier who usually does your route. And she said, well, I'm the sub. I'm her sub. I said, well, her. I just wanted you to know I don't want her job taken away from her or an official reprimand or anything, but she better get her act together. This is where I blew it because nobody should do this. It's idiotic. I said, I blew it. I gave it away that she was being investigated. Long story short, you just don't do that. It's the most foolish thing I've done in all this. I'm really smart sometimes, and I've done some foolish stuff other times, but that was really just outright painfully foolish. And by the time the sub was turned around and going back down my driveway, she was on the cell phone, and I believe notifying her boss, the woman who was usually the carrier, Scarlett, that you better watch it. Your trouble over here. He's got the dogs on you now because you've been lying and stuff or whatever they joked about. Well, because she knew somebody was going to be investigating her. I didn't tell her. I kept that back. I didn't tell her how the investigation was going to be performed. She probably was very familiar with that, doing her job, and she watched her butt for 3 days and got by. So in a week, I got a call back from the guy. Actually, I think I had to call the guy who was tailing her around, and his response to me was pretty obvious. I mean, wouldn't it be? Well, I didn't find anything, and I'm like, well. I told him at that point, I said, I think I really fooled myself here. I really dropped the ball and did something foolish. And he agreed. He talked down to me the rest of the conversation and basically told me what a fool I was. And that you blew it and now nothing's going to get done. And I'm like, wow, you get one shot at life and you end up never getting your mail delivered again. I had no idea how bad it was going to get. Now I see this video is going long. I'm going to have to have a part 4. But I'm going to introduce part 4 by the end of this video. I may just put them all together so I don't even have to worry about it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep going. Okay, now on to some other things that happened and where we are today. 2 years ago, finally got to the point where I it was just way too much. The mail continued to get in the road. She was leaving the mailbox open constantly. The theft had occurred where I lost a $25 package, and I saw it beginning as a pattern to where I was never going to get my mail delivered right. And I want the viewer to realize that the escalation is a game that my local postal service has played with me that I never understood. I never saw it coming, but it's just you don't think that people can be as immature as they can be, not just in that position, but making that amount of money in a job that is often confused with a federal job. So it's really not, but still, you rely on these people. The ads and things show them as genuine neighborly people. And yet, if you have a problem with one of them, you can be entirely lost and your mail can be in jeopardy the rest of your days on this planet. They know you. They know a lot about you by looking at your mail. And for one example is I've had to have all my mail go to my girlfriend's house now. All of it. Anything. Recently, I fell back on old habits and got lazy and said, "Why are you doing this? Let's have a couple of packages go back to your house, my house, Mike." Uh, it's ridiculous to have to go to your girlfriend's house. You might even have 2 packages a week when, if you don't go over there, it's just a wasted trip. So I have them delivered to my house now. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I want to frame something else that happened that was to me the most changing, or the game-changing event, if you will, almost exactly 2 years ago. It was in 2013 in August or so. I finally had enough, and I called the local office, and they said I spoke with a guy named Dan Abrams 2 or 3 times. He seemed very logical and very level-headed. So he told me he was going to come by and inspect. They take all their complaints seriously. He's going to come by my house and inspect my mailbox. And I'm torn on that. I'm like, well, it's kind of odd, but you don't believe me that it's okay, but that's fine. If that's going to be what it takes to resolve this issue, then sure, you can come by at any time. Just give me a 20-minute heads up and I'll be here if you need me. If not, don't even worry. Anytime you want, of course, it's your mailbox. Go by, or I guess, you're free to do that. He's an inspector or something. The truth is, at the time, this guy, Dan Abrams, was basically a nobody. He was a clerk. That's what I've been told by another clerk. Actually, 2 clerks at the local office when they gamed me recently. And by gamed, I mean they played fetch with my mail, gave me pickup notices when I was at home, and forced me to go down and get my mail. It's not a long drive, but by the time I go there and come back, it's at least a 5-mile round trip. And as this happens continually now, it gets frustrating. So the guy comes by my house, I am home, and he makes sure of that. He doesn't just check my mailbox. He checks it before he even comes up the driveway. All right, I'll cut the video, and I want to... Okay, interestingly enough, he checks my mailbox before he comes up the driveway, but he intentionally neglects to tell me he's checked my mailbox and found it to be okay, that it doesn't flop back open on its own. Before that, he had indicated, before he inspected it, he said, well, why don't you just put a spring on it or something? I'm like, dude, there's nothing wrong with it. If you want to come by and inspect it, that's one thing, but I shouldn't have to do that. So, again, the escalation. I didn't want to put a spring on a normal plastic mailbox door, so he says he's going to do one thing, and what he comes over is to over the top and perform a little power play. Here's how that went down. He comes up my driveway, already having inspected the mailbox, just not telling me it's okay, and spends 30 minutes talking to me out of my driveway, and it's very off-putting. His conversation is very, very off-putting, and it turned out to be a major power play on his part. What I mean by that is he approached me, he greeted me, and we exchanged courtesies. Then we started getting down to brass tacks. I said, well, I don't know what we're going to do about all this. But he says, first of all, Mr. Denny, let me tell you this. We don't take carrier complaints very lightly. And when you complain about one of my carriers, he said, one of my carriers, I take it very seriously. So that's why I'm here. And frankly, Mr. Denny, many of your complaints, we have had questions about you. And we've wondered if there's something wrong with you and if you're actually telling the truth. And he began to turn the conversation around and blame it on me, everything. And I'm like, wow, this is very wrong. This is very wrong. I'm telling the YouTube viewer, this is extremely wrong. No matter if I have a psych history past, but regardless, eye to eye, I would never tell anybody. The truth is that is very wrong. If you ever find yourself, talking with a local supervisor for the Postal Service and you find them turning and twisting things around and suddenly you've done anything, think about this. You're not supposed to be doing the job. It's not your job, it's their job. For them to be claiming anything, first of all, it better be true. And there was not even a dog or a barking dog on my driveway when this little twerp came by. And I made mention of that to him. I'm like, she was saying I had a barking dog, and I guess that went south. That was my fault, but that investigation should have proved that if you've ever come by, I told him he could come by again and check and see if I put the dog away or something. I'm not bluffing. This is real stuff going on. At the time I was getting ready, I didn't know this, but I was getting ready to be diagnosed with high blood pressure. Well, this kind of stuff is the exact kind of stuff that'll do that to you after a while. And one of the things I did was to have my blood pressure medicine come through the mail. And I started thinking, wow, he can save. I was saving $30 or $40 a prescription in over 6 months, and it became a financial issue. But at the same time, is this a good idea? Because it's coming. So I had to send it to my girlfriend's house. Long story short, so I'm frustrated, but I didn't know how frustrated I was going to be at the time. By the time the guy leaves, Dan Abrams has told me, he has attempted to coerce me, and I know that's a strong word, so I'll just basically quote how it went. Dan tells me that, Mr. Mike, you seem like a nice enough guy or anything and everything, but the honest truth is you've made so many complaints we can't substantiate that we're not going to be able to do anything about this carrier, first of all, because I, Mr. Dan Abrams, don't have the authority to do that. And I said, whoa, wait right there. What do you mean? You said that you're the supervisor. I really did believe he was, because he identified himself as such. He had plenty of opportunities to change his story while he was talking with me man to man on my driveway. This is quote unquote his carrier that he's taking very seriously, these accusations I've been making, and he had already turned the conversation around and was more or less bullying me. And the guy's half my size. I wasn't appreciating that. I was very frustrated, and he was getting a kick out of that, and that's wrong. And so he's sitting there saying stuff, and I'm like, look, what do you mean you don't have the authority to do anything? He said, well, that's the thing. She's got seniority over me. And I'm like, how can she have seniority over you if you're her supervisor? I said that out loud. And of course, that's an opportunity for him to chime in. Oh, no, of course you got it wrong. I'm sorry if I misrepresented myself, blah, blah, blah. He did not do that at any point in the conversation. 30 minutes he stood on my driveway. He knew what he was doing. He was just, fronting up for her. They do that. Cops do that. Cops can be so right to do that, or they can be so wrong to do that. But cops do that. Well, if you think cops do that, this became a comedy of issues rather than errors, really, where the more I complained, the more the local office had already circled the wagons in their minds and were going to escalate my problems with my mail delivery with each and every complaint I called in, to the point where now, in 2015, I hear from a temporary carrier who's going to be here till March. That's a pretty long stay. She tells me that she's been told by the boss, it could be Dan Abrams, and I'm going to say why, to not deliver my mail to my front porch anymore because I'm just harassive. And I'm like, harassive? That is a bad, prove it. Prove it. I'm not harassing her now. Yeah, I just don't know where you can go with that. It's a criminal enterprise to manipulate somebody over their mail, and I think it's really it's a very unprofessional way to conduct yourselves if you're a postal office, and to circle the wagons and make the customer blame the customer, like blaming the victim, but not as bad, not as far. That's just very immature, actually, and it indicates there's something needs to be more done on my behalf. Well, this is one of those things, this video. If nobody wants to watch the video, I don't care. I've turned off comments on all my videos because YouTube crowd can be good or bad. But looking for some support because I don't have video. I won't have video till later this week, and a hidden camera out there could be torn up the minute I put it out there. Who knows? Okay, so more back and forth with that little guy, Dan Abrams, and basically during a conversation, coercion occurred where he was starting to tell me, Mr. Denny, with all the levels of complaints that you've had against this fine carrier of mine, I don't see how you're ever not going to, have a problem with her anymore, because I think a lot of it's been you. I'll move on. He said he tried to manipulate me into buying a P.O. box, which I don't know how much it is currently, but a lot of times I think those have been around $50 a year is what you're paying for one of those, and going up. So I said, absolutely not. I don't feel that would be right. My neighbors are receiving their mail, I thought at the time. One of them wasn't, but I later on verified that with him, and we got together on that. Just in case we ever have to validate our stories. I was getting his mail, and he was getting mine. But before the little guy, Dan Abrams, left, he urged me to either get a P.O. box or get a security mailbox, which was expensive, and or just quit complaining because basically I'm a bitch and I just need to shut up about it because it's all my fault. At that point, I said, well, I don't understand why she's not doing this. He said, look, oh, you're saying she's been delivering it to your front porch? Well, she's not supposed to do that. And for the next 5 minutes, he stonewalled me belligerently, talking over me. Mr. Denny, Mr. Denny, Mr. Denny. You know how annoying that is when people do that, when they think they're right. Mr. Denny, you say she's delivering it to your front porch. She can't do that. I'm like, look, dude, I don't care about the specifics. You're getting too technical. I just expect my mail to be delivered like anybody else. If it's a package, she can roll right up where you're standing. And at the time, he's standing right on the side of my house where my garage doors were, and she can walk to my front porch and deliver the package just like she does everybody else. I was just saying this is what she told me she did when I first moved in, Mr. Abrams, and so I would like to continue to extend that. I had mentioned it only to mention that if she has he was claiming that they are not supposed to do that because their vehicles get stuck. I said, Mr. Abrams, if she wants to leave one axle, one wheel on the front walk, then she's more than welcome to do that, and that way she wouldn't risk getting bogged down. He said, I don't know about all that because I don't know which axle runs the vehicle. And keep in mind, she had by then gotten a genuine U.S. Postal Service vehicle, so how would he not know that if he's a supervisor? If he's a scrub, he should know that. So he's continues to talk over me very rudely, and he's trying to coerce me by acting like she was doing me a big favor all along by driving my mail to my front porch. I called him on it by saying, well, she can just walk up the walkway, but if she wants to continue doing this, I would like to offer this method to prevent her truck from being bogged down. Now, what makes that ridiculous is that for years this woman had intentionally pulled around in a bottom area, low area in my front yard. It's about a 3-acre front yard, and she had bogged down many times. And I had called her supervisor, and one of the things I had discussed with them is the fact that she was tearing up my yard. If they would like to come by and see where I say it's okay to turn around, because I have a turnaround at the end of my driveway in the garage. If she says that's blocked, then she can go off to the right at the end of that driveway, and it's all flat rock. It looks green. That's moss. Sanitation trucks turn around there and will never get bogged down because, like I said, it's all flat rock. It's flat. It's rock. It's natural. This is not something like shale. This is not going to break. And so I showed little Dan Abrams right then and there what I was talking about. I said, well, she can pull around here too. This is all flat rock. So we're not going to argue about that. And it seemed to antagonize him because he had come there to argue. That's what he had come there to do. While this video is going long, the sun is going down. I've had to put a light up here so you can see me better. It's pretty grainy film and pretty crappy, but I'm almost done with my little story. Abrams, before he left, Dan Abrams, the guy told me basically it was going to be their way, or a choice of their ways or the highway. I wasn't ever going to get my mail delivered again because of me. It was my fault, and they were rubbing it in all my complaints in my face. So that's unfortunately the way the post office works in my neck of the woods, and I hope not other people, but I know you have your stories, but I don't think not many people have it this long. The movie The Funny Farm comes to mind, but if there's anybody out there with chronic delivery failures, I would think they live in rural areas as well, and it would be hard for them to upload a YouTube video. Whereas me, I live barely on the outskirts of town. I certainly have high-speed internet, so I'm doing this. Now, catching up. I think I've rambled over my tail so far, and that hurt. But to the letters and the latest postal failures, pickup notices. I got finally to the point where in 4 years of this monstrous, really escalatingly bad service with my local post office, and all the time I've never spoken to her more than 3 times, 4 times, I felt like I need to do something more. I went online and I finally, believe it or not, a tech who could not figure out where to find the email address for the Postal Regulatory Commission. Well, test yourselves, and if those who have never done that before, see how long it takes you to find that. And you know what it's called now. I just told you. It was hard. It was very difficult. It was on a pretty much obscure. How many people coast through government websites? How many people watch C-SPAN all day long? It was hard to do. I happened upon it. I Googled the right thing and I found it after 4 years of this crap. So I found the email address, emailed them back in October, and the reason I did this, at the time, the escalation had gotten so bad that Amazon packages, some of which were no bigger than this little box, or even envelopes, which were really padded envelopes, no thicker than this remote, and 8 by 10, were getting held for pickup when I was at home. Uh, in October, I made the decision that I would contact them because I went out and paid $100 for a security mailbox from Home Depot. I may put the link in it, but it's a nice one. It's one of those where you have the top part that has a pull down thing, and when you pull the lid down, it comes up in the back to prevent theft, and then you collect the mail from the bottom via a keyed entry. It was ridiculous feeling to do that because keep in mind that I'm not getting enormous packages. These are small technical parts like anything. I'm not building a bomb, okay, but this is all just a bunch of technical crap. Like a bag of these. 4 RC batteries, radio control batteries. Computer RAM. I don't know. I don't have any around right now, but just ridiculous claptrap like that. And I closed out my business because I couldn't look my customers in the face anymore and say one of the reasons I closed my business was an equal share of it was because I could not look my customers in the face anymore and tell them honestly, I'll have your part by the end of the week, without thinking to myself, yeah, if she doesn't throw it up on the porch, let's hope she doesn't, clap it up on the porch like she does. In the past 2 years, I remember ordering another part for myself. And in this time, I had 3 or 4 laptop parts, screens that were delivered in such a manner. An illegal softball throw is what I would call it. Too high, collapsed on the front porch. It was a work of art. She really did have to plan that out. It was a work of actual perfection. Ironically, I'm being sarcastic here, but she really did have to work hard to misdeliver the mail as many ways as she found to do so. And all the time, the most immature thoughts going through her head, like, if he complains again, I'm going to say he has a dinosaur. What was she going to say next, really? So, okay, I order an Xbox 360 wireless controller, and I was here the day that arrived because I could hear it from the kitchen when it hit the front porch, and I was like, oh God, how does she arch that stuff when it's at waist level? She's actually getting out of her vehicle, walking up, bending it over, and I guess like a woman who does, or a man who doesn't know how to bowl, she lets go of the ball, or they let go of the ball too late, arches it, whack. I couldn't even believe it hit so perfectly flat. And the controller was borderline from then on. This is a brand new controller. I'm a crybaby, but it was mine. I did pay $50 for it off of Amazon, and it has never really worked like one of my older controllers does to this day, and it's the front right bumper button. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying I'll never know whether she did that or not. This is another in a long string of misdeliveries by her, or miscarriages of delivery, what have you. And of course, I didn't speak to her that day either. All these instances where she kept misdelivering my mail, and it kept getting escalated. And all those times, I never bothered her. Never bothered her. Personally, I called her bosses. I must have called 50 complaints in a 4-year time. That's a lot. But I shouldn't have really had to call one. I wouldn't keep in mind I didn't call until the first year of this, where she had left my mailbox open, where she had left packages out to get wet. These were things I let go too far, So I was too nice. I'll look anybody in the face and tell them that. So lately, what happened in October? After I bought the mailbox, I wrote the United States Postal Regulatory Committee. Now, they sent me the letter I showed in the first part of my video. They actually didn't send me the letter. They sent a notice to the Kentuckiana office, and then they sent me the letters saying, well, here's the best passage. The situation has been thoroughly investigated by the Bowling Green postmaster, Jamal Jones. His employees recall the issues you brought to our attention. Really, they recall them? That's not being sarcastic at all, facetious. To our attention, and thought each issue was resolved to your satisfaction. Really now? They told her that's the length of the investigation. You send a notice to the Postal Regulatory Commission. It's basically, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. And you get that kicked back bureaucratically to a Kentuckiana office who rubs your nose in something they may not even know about, but the local office is like, we told them it's all okay. It's not even funny. And that's one reason that Postal Service is where it is in terms of failures. And will be failing until they fix that kind of customer service. That's slop. That's just a bunch of crap. And that's the only way to put it. I'm not going to go postal about it. I'm going to go on YouTube about it. They've gone postal, I'm sure. Oh yes, that's my next comment. Shortly after I received this letter, I had problems. Half the orders I made from Amazon from then on were held, and of the ones that were held, one of them was outside of Amazon and genuinely would not fit in my mailbox. But I was at home at the time that the attempt was supposedly made to deliver it. Now, of course, I can't prove that. The other ones were small. The boxes were small, as I've showed as examples. This thing, that small. An envelope, 10 by 8, 8 by 10 envelope, that small. An envelope smaller than that, then an 8 by 10 version of that, smaller, 6 by 4, were held for pickup, supposedly for no reason given. Customer, it wouldn't even say, they wouldn't even bother write. That's the previous carrier who'd give me all the trouble. I did call at the point, and it was after I received, actually it was right before I sent this letter, and again the timeline, forgive me, this is very flustering. Should work down an outline, but who does that? The stories are true. Timeline's the only thing that's wrong. Right before I was made the complaint to the Postal Regulatory Commission, I had called the office and got what I would call a smart aleck, and I went around and around with them about it. Apparently, at the time, they had already put the local word out that they were going to blacklist me. Of course, I'll never prove that, but the guy I talked with identified himself as a postmaster, or a supervisor. He was a higher up, and he told me in the conversation a bunch of bunk, and he never said he was sorry, and it was very upsetting to talk to the guy. He kept frustrating me more and more because he wouldn't deal with the issue that I kept getting failure to deliver notices, two out of three were just absolutely unmerited. There's no reason to put a notice in your box when your car is parked at the side of your house at the end of the driveway, and what you're actually doing is blacklisting somebody. So the guy, at the end of the conversation, I finally got frustrated enough to make the final this comment. I said, I'm very frustrated, as you can tell, but it's not like I'm going to go postal about it. And that's when the conversation went to hell. He stopped me in mid-sentence and he said, well, I got to tell you, I just find your comment there very offensive. We just don't take that very lightly. And again, this is the kind of just defeatist bullshit that you're just ready to explode. And young people, you go to church and everything, and faith is a great and wonderful thing. I try to be a Christian. I believe in Christ. But at that point, you're snapping, and they know it, and they're rubbing your nose in it. And I didn't curse or anything. I think I said something like, "This is bull crap, and you know it." And I hung up. I said, I'm going to have to go over your head because I know now that you're not serious. For you to take that comment I made, it's a horrible thing that has happened and that created that colloquialism. Nobody wants to go postal. But for you to stop the conversation, you've never acknowledged any other point I made in the conversation about the issues, and you never once in our conversation addressed any of the issues seriously, and yet you're going to pick on something I said. You're going to pick out something I say, and you're going to halt the conversation based on that. I just don't understand it. And at that point, he began their immature bullshit that they had done before, which was talking over me and Mr. Denny this and Mr. Denny that. If you're going to do that, you understand you're being very facetious to call somebody by this, like Ricky Bobby, call somebody asshole. If you're going to be facetious and say be belligerent or bully them in conversation, don't call them. It's very facetious to call them by their surname and act like you're being respectful when actually what you're doing is being very childish and very petty and frustrating. And the one thing you'll never do is your job right. Since the call back in, I made it at twerp back in October or early November of last year, 2014, I have had many issues with my mail. And every time I order something, I have to fret and worry over whether it's going to get here or not. And it escalated to the point where last Saturday I was supposed to get 3 items about the size smaller than this. The 3 items I was supposed to get, and we all know what Amazon does. These were from Amazon. By the time you get 3 of these, the box genuinely couldn't fit in a postal drop box. This was probably a bigger box. I agree with that. I'm not irrational, but I was at home the day that it was out for delivery. I do track my packages online. I'll always do that whether I have trouble or not. For convenience sake, I tracked it was out for delivery. Uh, and I never got it. I was standing in my yard at the time the notice was written that said they tried to deliver it, and the notice reads. Actually, that notice read nothing but the online description of the end of day for this tracking on USPS.com said that there was, quote, no secure delivery location available. And I'm like, what does that mean? I wasn't thinking it wouldn't fit in the box at the time. Maybe I should have. But I'm thinking, okay, what else could that be? I'm standing in the yard. Is my hand not a delivery location that's secure enough? I mean, my other hand might have my wallet in it with my ID. That's what it would have if you needed any more secure than that. But to falsify a notice or to turn it in online falsely or whatever their computer system, to use that to falsify something is egregious. So it's no big deal to most anybody else unless you've had it happen to you, and if it continued to happen chronically. So I know I don't like that. I went online and I scheduled a redelivery. I went online and I said, okay, I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to take my little notice and drive downtown just because they're playing me and playing games with my mail. I didn't hurt to say that to myself, so I went online and I rescheduled it. And the second day is the one that just absolutely blew me away. I was digging a 500-foot trench to the end of my driveway to put B&C cable down, Siamese cable down, and I see a postal delivery vehicle, an official one, drive up. At first, I can't make out if it's the old carrier, the trouble carrier, or not. Then I figure it's not her, and I'm like, well, thank God, if maybe she's quit or retired. And I'm standing 50 feet from the end of my 500-foot gravel drive. There's a clearing where you can see me. I waved at this person. They did acknowledge and wave back. Kind of strange the way they were acting though, like they were in a hurry. The woman was the current temp, and she was writing me this notice. I don't know if you can see it, but it says second notice, NOTIS. Second notice. Can you believe that? That's how she spells it. And she also said right there on the notice, will not fit in box. Of course, I blew my stack. She had already driven down to my neighbor's house and was driving up his driveway to deliver his package 2 doors down. It's like 400 yards away. But I humped it over there, which the millennial generation may not know what that means. I ran. I tripped, I fell, it was comical. I would have laughed if it hadn't been me. Bloodied my knee up, nearly died to get over there, running like Eric Cartman the whole way. But I arrived where she was. I had the notice in the air, and in the other hand, I had my cell phone videoing this for YouTube. And I'm halfway up the driveway, and both she and my neighbor, who is a terrible dude, I don't even want to mention him here, he's tried to manipulate me out of free computer work before. He's just really bad. He's a turd. They were standing right at his side door, staring at me like they were about to call the cops. If they would have, they could have gone ahead and taken me to the emergency room because I was about to keel over on my face. I'm sure my knee was bloodied. I was breathing so hard I could barely even say it. But as I ambled up the driveway, blocking her retreat, I was holding the phone up one hand saying, "You got to give me my package, lady." Showing her the notice in the other. I can't believe you got there. You saw me. I was standing there. I waved at you. You acknowledged it. What? It says it wouldn't fit in the box. Why didn't you just give it to me right there? And before I even got those words out, she was already doing that stuff, talking over me. Sir, Mr. Sir, really obnoxious. Kind of like at the beginning of anger management, where you get Adam Sandler about to get arrested by a federal marshal who's had a bad day because the airline oh God, not stewardess, whatever not stewardesses are these days. The flight attendant was giving them a hassle basically, and it was ridiculous. Sir, calm down. This literally was said to me as I was about to keel over. I was grabbing my chest because it was hurting. I said, lady, look, please, you guys hear me out. I don't know what's going on here, but she said, sir, listen, 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 Mr. Denny. I've been told not to deliver your mail to your house because you harassed your last carrier. And at that point, I just stopped, and I couldn't believe it. All I remember is thinking, don't lock your knees, you're about to pass out. This is unbelievable. For the next minute, I stumbled over my words, worse than I have in this video. I begged her and pleaded with her that if she was going to be my new carrier, let's start over. I never gave that previous carrier any problems. I've always been the nicest person to anyone in a service fraternity, anyone who did service work, because my whole family, blah, blah, blah. Calm down, Mr. Denny. Calm down, Mr. Denny. Calm down. I'll make a deal with you, she said. And again, there's another thing you should never find yourself in the position of having your postal carrier tell you, quote, I'll make a deal with you over the delivery of your mail. And I just stopped. I'm like, lady, please don't give me that, because I've been dealing with a lunatic. This lady has not delivered my mail correctly in 4 years. Please tell me she's retired or something. She said she has. She retired, but before she retired, they told me to carry this out. That's the subtext. To not deliver your mail to your porch anymore. So when you have a package that won't fit in the box, yes, I went out and spent $100 on security mailboxes, larger aperture than a regular mailbox, but that's not good enough. Now they're going to play a new game and switch it to where they're not going to do what they did for my neighbor that very day. They're not going to go to my driveway, down my driveway. I guess it would be better if I'm not home. Should I call them every morning and tell them where I am to report in, or get on Facebook and have it report my location so that their carriers feel safe when I've never done anything to them and all they've ever done is lie and miscarry my mail? I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. I didn't say any of that to that girl, but I was thinking, of course at the time I didn't know she doesn't know how to spell the word notice, or spells it with an S and no E. And I'm thinking, okay, Mike, let's just try to start over. I said, lady, look, I know I have a phone in my hand trying to video you, so look, I'm going to stop the video. And she's like, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, that, Mr. Denny, I don't care about that. Of course you should care about that, but you shouldn't, I said, look, I pushed stop, my hand will do it, I was shaking. I said, look, I will hit delete. Now there's where I did the wrong thing. I overdid it on the deal part of getting my mail. Forgive me, because this is something you should never have to deal with for prolonged, your mail is mishandled and miscarried for 4 long years. You just run 400 yards to get to a neighbor's house to try to get your package delivered, and I weigh 250 freaking pounds. I'm only 5'8". I was about to keel over dead. I actually dropped my phone on the ground after having deleted the file. I said, lady, the phone is out of the question. If you're telling me that previous carrier is gone, I've been praying for this to happen, and so has the other neighbor over there for like 3 years. I've been praying for her to retire because they've been telling me that they can't do anything about her because she's so close to retirement. I said, I completely understand that, but you got to understand how it is to have your mail miscarried for 4 long years where you're not getting packages. In this video, which is a very long, strung-out video, I actually have not mentioned several times this game was played with me over the past 3 years, where they give me a delivery notice or a pickup notice when I know I was at home at the very minute that the notice was put in the mailbox and put into their computer system. I was at home, and there's no excuse, because according to them at the time, I hadn't even really started complaining. Not John Paul Jones, but I have started complaining now, and I think I'm going to make a more or less a little video blog of this to see how my service goes from now on. And it will have the name USPS right in the title and the heading, so we'll see what happens from now on. But basically, she finally told me that her deal that she was talking about, making a deal with me about my mail, apparently she didn't have the package with her. So that's another thing that's frustrating. She had just written me a notice saying will not fit in box, But she had not left the office with it that morning because her boss had told her not to deliver my packages. So that's false. That's just a falsehood. She's telling me one thing, and you can't say it won't fit in the box. I'm saying, how can it not fit in the box if you didn't bring it? You left. I didn't say that to her, but I'm saying that to the world. How can you say one thing and it's just not? You can't have both. It can't fit in the box if it's not even in the truck. So it's ridiculous. I'll cut the video again. This was the height of this interaction with this new temporary carrier. She said she's only going to be there till March. I told her, of course, I will be her best customer, but I don't want to overdo it because I think that's what happened with the first one. I said I just want to start all over, and you'll never have a problem from me. Trust me. And she acted doubtful, so I tried to explain. This is something that I am a very talkative person. But my family, again, has worked hard, and I don't mistreat people who are in service jobs, and I hope she gives me a chance. I said, regardless of what your boss is telling you, I'm not a harassive person. I just don't go around doing that. And if you'll just give me a chance, just between you and me, I promise you will never have a problem with me of any kind. And if that wasn't earnest enough, which apparently she didn't think it was, I told her, look, I don't know what else to tell you, but you don't even have to acknowledge whether you're hearing what I'm saying, but please just let me say it. What you've heard about me is wrong. So I know you've got to protect your job because you just started it. But what you've heard about me is a lie. What you've heard that I'm harassing the other carrier, frankly, I don't know how they can say that. If that's an infrastructure kind of thing, I guess it's like no shirt, no shoes, no service. You're crazy, no service. You're harassive, no service. But I told her they never even told me this. And then she began to reiterate her deal with me. So she said, sir, I'll make you a deal. Monday, no, wait a minute. Monday's Martin Luther King Day, so we're not going to be working that day. Okay, Tuesday, are you going to be at home? And I'm like, ooh, I'm conflicted now. Should I be at home or should I not be at home for you to deliver my mail? But what came out, what I actually said was, yes, I promise I'll be here. She said, and the ridiculousness of it was hitting me even then because I told her, just a few seconds later, man, I was here the first time you came by. I said, beside all that, we don't want to get off on the wrong foot. I'm going to be at home Tuesday morning. I will not even talk to you. I will just be peering out the window. Whatever you think of me, that's what I'll be doing. When you want to deliver my mail Tuesday morning, that's great. Or Tuesday afternoon. So the usual delivery time is anywhere from 12 noon to 5 p.m. every day in my section of the world here. And so she eventually tried to make a promise, which I don't even know if she's going to get to keep it, because Tuesday, that is tomorrow, I'm going to bring the notice with me down to the local post office, and I'm going to bring a witness with me, so that when I pick up the package, I will make a complaint, and if it gets to the point where they take me in an office or something, I will have a witness who will not, we're not going to be taking any bull about it. If they're mishandling my mail, they need to formally tell me why, and at that point tomorrow when I go down, I'm going to tell them, prove it. I need you to prove it. And I'm not being facetious here. If you're going to withhold every package that doesn't fit in my box, and you're going to be providing standard services to my neighbors, which you are now denying me based on your claim that I harassed a previous carrier who's not even on the job anymore, then I need you to prove it. I need you, at least in writing, that I need to be able to answer those claims. I think that's only American. If they're going to claim that I harassed my postal carrier, they need to prove it. They need to prove it in writing in each instance that I was said to have spoken with her personally, which would be harassment, or what they are claiming harassment is even. If they're claiming it's when I called her boss and never spoke to her but called in a complaint, you need to make it clear that that's harassment in your terms and that you can deny someone services based on a complaint. And I think the rest of the world needs to know that too. And somehow I'll get this video cut and edited and sent up to YouTube. But I think that's what needs to be said about my situation and what other people need to know, because that's the gist of my whole case. The whole crux of the matter is you can't mistreat someone or deny them services in that service area, and USPS pretty much has you know, the world by, you know, they they cannot deny those kinds of services that they provide. They're so important. Uh, it's just such a conflict to have to deal with it, and they've got to explain themselves.